Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning, and welcome to our first virtual network meeting. It's 11 o'clock. I think there's a few more people who are due to join us, so I think we're just going to wait a couple of minutes. If you all want to put yourselves on mute for the time being, but feel free to keep your videos on so people can see you, which is much nicer. We'll just give it another couple of minutes. We've got a few more people to join. You can see the participants at the bottom of the screen joining us, and we're expecting around about 40 people. So we'll just give it 2 more minutes before everybody else joins, before we start. So people who are just joining us, if you want to put yourselves on mute, keep your videos on, obviously, so we can all see you. But if you put yourselves on mute, it just avoids dogs barking, children crying, doorbells ringing, and any other noises that you might have going on in your homes at this moment in time, which are all very pleasant, but obviously slightly disruptive if everybody's making noises at the same time. Okay, we're just going to wait 1 more minute just till everybody's had a chance to join. My colleague Ross is letting people into the room as we speak. So this is the point where we would normally be having coffee, catching up with each other, talking about the weather. We are all having coffee, I can see. Thankfully we don't have to talk about the horrific journey we had getting to the meeting. We can talk about the weather if you like, but I think that would be a rather long conversation right now. Okay, I think we'll make a start. We've got 30 people in the room now. I think we're expecting a few more, so we might get a few late stragglers joining us. Welcome everyone. I think most of you know me. My name's Deb Oxley, Chief Exec at the Employee Ownership Association, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all to this, our first virtual network meeting. I'm just going to quickly run through the Zoom protocols we'd like you to use, because this isn't obviously a webinar, it's a meeting, which is fantastic because it means we're all on the same basis, we can all see each other, and when we unmute we can hear each other. If you're not familiar with it, you can view in different ways. You can view the speaker view at the right hand corner, which only then shows you who's speaking, or you can do the gallery view and you can see as many people as possible on your screen. And of course now when we've got a slide showing, the slide dominates. There's a chat function at the bottom, and that's where we'd like you to ask your questions, or just tell us that you've got a question. When we're hearing from our speaker later on, at the end there's going to be a chance of course to ask questions. Now it's entirely up to you. If you would like me to ask your question, then just pop it in the chat, but remember to send your chat message just to me rather than to everybody, otherwise everybody will get to see them. Well, you can do that if you wish, but it's much easier and less messy, I think, if you just send it to me. If you want to ask the question yourself, then just let me know that you've got a question and I'll make sure that I invite you in. And when you are invited in, unmute yourself, don't forget to do that please, and just tell John who you are and where you're from. That would be really helpful. There's also a reactions button on a Zoom meeting. I don't know if any of you have found that before. It's really nice thing to do. There's a little clap and there's a little thumbs up. If you hear something that you think, I totally agree with that, stick your thumbs up. It's just really nice for the speakers to see that, because if we were in the room with you, we'd be getting lots of nods and good eye contact. It's quite difficult in these situations to get that. So that's your way of saying, yeah, I agree with that, it's a good point, or point well made. So, welcome back everyone. It seems a long time since we had one of our regional network meetings, and obviously we apologise that we've not been able to host those for you, but we're hoping that this new virtual network meeting platform and format will work. We've had a month's break from doing anything virtually, and that was just to give us a chance to sort of pause and reflect and make sure that we were planning for the next 6 months. So over the last few months, I thought I'd probably just recap on what we have been doing. I think some of you will have participated in our Better Together webinars. So we had 10 of those, 214 different member organisations participated. And we had over 720 of you join us in real time. And then as at the end of June, there were almost 1,000 downloads of those webinars as well. So I think we hope that they delivered some value to you when you were all going through that initial awful stage of the lockdown and working through all the challenges that each of your businesses was facing at that time. At the end of June, we then had EO Day, and I just wanted to thank all of you for the tremendous contributions. We had 33 different videos being shared on EO Day. Those were videos created by you in your businesses. And we had over 37 stories shared as well, and some of those were in the press. And actually, we had the best reach ever on Twitter. So we had 4.5 million Twitter impressions on EO Day, which was absolutely tremendous, the highest we've ever had. Many more followers on LinkedIn and on Facebook. So thank you to all of you who participated in EO Day and helping us celebrate. And on EO Day, some of you will have seen that we also released new data on the sector. So the White Rose Centre for Employee Ownership is a partnership we have, and they capture the data about the sector. And on EO Day, on the 24th of June, they released the data, which shows that there are now 470 employee-owned businesses. The sector has experienced the strongest growth ever. So last year, 28% growth in the size of the sector, and 100 new businesses created since June last year. So it's a growing picture of more employee-owned businesses, which is fantastic. And that's despite where we are now, and despite the challenges of COVID, we are still seeing lots of business owners consider employee ownership for their next chapter of their own business. So looking ahead, what have we got planned? So we've, as I said, we regrouped, if you like, and we took a pause to look at what we need to do for you, our members. And we've repositioned our offer back around where we were, which actually is about connecting, championing and campaigning. So connecting is obviously about you guys. It's about our ability to help you solve problems, deal with issues, introduce you to each other, find platforms for you to connect like this and the EO Hub, and really to help your businesses thrive and not just survive during this terrible period, but also to look to the future together. We're also focused on championing, which we always have been. EO Day is a great example of our championing work. And that's really about making sure that we are using your stories to reach out to important audiences, particularly through the media, to champion and celebrate and be advocates of employee ownership. And then the last priority is our campaigning work. And that's obviously about how we represent your interests. And right now, there are some great opportunities for us to do that, not least in thinking about the Build Back Better agenda and the Levelling Up agenda, which are very present for this government and for the economy and the country as a whole. And we can certainly see the opportunities of where employee ownership can play a much more meaningful and important role as we do build back better. So that's going to be our focus in the future, looking forwards. And today is very much about that connecting priority for us. So these virtual network meetings, we're hoping are going to be a really positive experience for all of you. Thankfully, they come at a time when I hope most of you have already had the chance to be part of a virtual meeting like this. So hopefully we may have some newbies in the room, and if we have, then don't worry, you'll get familiar with it quite quickly. We want to provide an opportunity for you to learn, and that's why we've got a keynote speaker in this template, this model. And we're also trying to provide that opportunity for you to connect, because we know that's really important. The networking bit of the regional network meetings was, of course, the bit that many of you told us was really important and added huge value. Now, we can't do it in exactly the same way, sadly. So we won't be able to use the open space style of allowing you to pop around the room and talk to different people. So what we've done is we asked you, of course, about moving into rooms, and that's what's going to happen later on. So hopefully today's model will work, but we are eyes wide open. We know that we won't necessarily get everything right first time. And that's why it's really important that you tell us at the end of this meeting, when we send you a survey, what worked for you, how did it feel, what would you like us to change, what ideas you've got to make it better for everybody. And obviously we hope that these sessions are going to continue, and we've got a schedule of dates that I'm going to share with you at the end. Okay, so we're moving on to today's topic, and I'm absolutely delighted that I'm joined by a fellow director actually of the new leadership group in Scotland, that's Scotland for Employee Ownership, John Housego. John took up the position of Managing Director at one of our leading members, Aquascot, only 5 months ago actually, and over the last 5 months, he and his colleagues have been reviewing their strategic priorities. And I'm really honoured that John's chosen our first virtual network meeting to join us and share his story of that. I'm not going to introduce anything more about John because he's going to do that himself. So John, I think probably you've unmuted yourself already, and I'm going to hand over to you. Whilst John's speaking, don't forget, if you've got questions, pop them through the chat function, or tell me that you want to ask a question at the end and I'll make sure I do. You might want to put your stop your videos at this point, just because you're going to be sat listening to John for a while. You can still use the reactions function if you wish. So John, floor's yours.
Thank you very much, Deb. Hopefully people can see my screen, and someone who's unmuted can tell me whether that's true or not. Can everybody see my screen? Okay,
it's
good.
Working, John, yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
good. So thank you for the opportunity to share some of our thoughts. So this can get confused around strategy and what strategy actually is and whether it's change management. So I'm going to throw in quite a few bits of that. I'm a new MD, and I'm, as Deb said, started right in the middle of COVID. The first week I started, the second week we went on lockdown. So it's been quite an interesting journey for me joining the company at that time. So what I'm going to talk about today is talk through the Aquascot EO journey, just so you've got a background of who we are and where we've come from, a little bit about me and my background, and then focus mostly on the journey that we've taken over the last 5 months around our strategic planning going forward for the future. And right at the end, please ask some questions as they go through. So Aquascot's journey to employee ownership. So Aquascot was established back in 1987. It started trading with Waitrose in 93 before becoming a dedicated supplier of salmon and trout to Waitrose in 2003. The owners then went through a journey themselves around what are they going to do with the company and where does it go, and they decided to take on the employee ownership route. And in 2008, Aquascot started that journey, which took 8 years to complete in terms of the complete buyout of the company. And then since 2016, it's been 100% employee owned. At that stage, we've appointed partners to the Aquascot Trust. Our employee ownership model is the same as John Lewis Partnership. In a sense, we have an Aquascot Trust and an Aquascot board, the execution team of the company itself. So what do we do? We're in 2019, we were around 45 million worth of turnover, which equates to something like 7,000 tons of salmon and trout procured. We invested or plan to invest over £1 million in our business this year. We contribute to the local economy, which is really important for us. We are centred right in the root of the Highlands, just north of Inverness. So 5 million goes straight into the local economy. We are 100% owned. We're about 178 partners. Our average age is 43 or so. We're 60-40 male-female. We are a living wage employer that we introduced just last year. We have 12 elected partnership council representatives, and we have 2 partners on the trust board and 1 partner on the Aquascot board. Last year, the company spent a lot of time reinvigorating their values. There were values established way back in 2006, and as part of the team growing and a new area of leadership with the company, they reinstated that work and did a lot of work last year and come up with these 4 overreaching values that we were operating to right now. So actively ambitious, power of partnership, integrity matters, and naturally kind. And coming from my background, values are really, really important as well as purpose, because it really guides you in policy as you move forward. And that needed to be built into our strategic direction as we move forward. So where did I come from? I'm a proud Cornishman. I was born literally 50 yards from the beach. I grew up on the beach in North Cornwall. I went to Loughborough University and was lucky enough to be sponsored by Kodak. So I moved to London. I worked in graphic arts as a design engineer on their process equipment, and then wanting to move further north, having married a Scots lady, I moved to Cumbria, worked for Eastman Chemical, and was doing a very geeky job in the background, programming distributed control systems, making too many tons of plastic that I finally woke up to, and managed to get myself into W.L. Gore and Associates. So the majority of my corporate career has been with Gore, 22 years working with the Gore-Tex brand, mostly in fabrics. The latter stages of that, I was working at enterprise level in manufacturing, supply chain, in digital transformation. It was due that period back in 2004 when we won Best Companies that Aquascot first reached out, and we had some discussions around culture and development, which is then when I got to know Aquascot. And then when they decided to move into the employee-owned journey, I joined as a non-exec back in 2008. So although I was new as an employee to Aquascot, I've been connected to the business since 2008. And this last piece is really, it's not only my journey, but it's everybody's journey, is change is a constant thing. And we need to adapt to that and live to that, because you never know what you're going to turn into. So we should always be striving to change and do that transformation just as a butterfly does. Okay, so strategic planning. The real topic here is about focus and joint clarity and key communication of commitments, and how do you develop those within an employee-owned structure, but also with my joining the company, it was part of the process I went through to really learn and understand that steep learning curve around what was going on and what was planned to be delivered. So why was it needed? In the first 2 weeks of joining, as I said, I joined for 1 week, and then the following week we went into lockdown, which made it very difficult to meet people. The other piece with Aquascot, we are a food producer, so we were key workers. And at that stage, going into lockdown, there was a lot of panic buying. So Aquascot was really, really busy. So we had orders above Christmas levels already, and they just maintained and kept going. But I started to meet with partners and talk through just to understand their roles, their commitment, what they thought should happen with the business, what commitments they thought I should have, and what success would look like. And I started to gather all of those things together for my own selfish need, really. It was clear that there was an awful lot of passion around to be successful, but it was also clear that there was an awful lot going on that was trying and striving to be delivered. I could not find any true clarity around priorities. That was common to all. So everybody had priorities, but there wasn't a common set of priorities that, from my point of view, could be clearly communicated to all partners around what was important, what was less important. There is an ambitious 5-year growth plan, and I was trying to link the activities to the growth plan, which was not so obvious. It was obvious in some people's minds, but not in all partners. So I started to work through that, and in my own methodical engineering way, if you like, started to divvy those up and put them into some sort of order and some sort of topics. For me, being an employee-owned business, it is really crucial that there's a good level of understanding right through the whole organization around who we are, what our business plan is, and what we contribute to add value, which is why we're here as a business. So part of this was to try and uncover some of that so we could share that with partners and raise the whole awareness of our business model. So is it strategic planning? Is it change management forum? Depending on which back of industry you come from. If you're an IT specialist looking at digital transformation, it's about change management. If you're in sales and marketing, it's about finding that niche in the market where you can truly add value in your unique position that you can create a business from. But for me, overall strategy needs to cover all of those. And your internal strategy is really about understanding your business growth needs and how those actions internally will help deliver those options that you're selecting as a strategic path forward. In effect, internally, it's about change management, because it's about delivering things and improving things in the direction that you want to take. And that became my focus. What I also wanted to do was to add not only realization around what was realistic around delivery, so our resources and our capability, but also add some accountability, and to be able to reward and recognize delivery when things were successfully delivered. So my goal when I started this was to deliver that clear plan, so have a tactical strategic plan alongside the financial plan that would include all of our initiatives, be clear that all of the Aquascot leadership team were behind and backing the same things, that we spoke with one voice, and broader, that the broader partnership team actually understood the sections that we had and where they helped deliver some of those capabilities that we wanted to establish. I wanted to be able to look at all of us and be clear about our accountability and who's delivering what, and each of us holding each other accountable for that delivery in that plan. And within whatever we came up with, that it was clearly highlight the chosen priorities of the business so that every partner could understand exactly what our goals were for the year. As I worked through this, there were some additional benefits that became clear to me, one of which was improvement in cross-functional working. So as I started to listen and hear from partners, there was a need for improving our cross-functional working and understanding of each other's teams. So part of my methodology for how we would work on these plans and these documents would be that we would mix the teams up and improve that cross-functional understanding and appreciation for each other. On the other side, there was also an opportunity to help coach and develop the team from the leadership team's point of view. I could see that we weren't traditionally doing a lot of coaching and development, and this provided an opportunity to instigate a little bit more of that. And then finally, by way of communicating to partners, it becomes a natural thing to talk about on a monthly or quarterly basis around progress to plan, and being able to recognize and reward people for delivery of this plan and the key pieces as we move through that communication processes. So what I did, I captured the work as I listened to the partners talking through what their priorities were, and I began to compile those into different buckets. At this time, we were deep into COVID-19 lockdown. The plant was seeing volumes and order levels way above anything that we had seen before on a consistent basis. So the whole of the team was completely swamped with delivering to Waitrose. As I was new to the business, I couldn't really contribute to that very much. So I sat on the side working on this. And then I started to engage with Simon, our financial director, who also wasn't directly involved with the operations in that scale of operation. And we started to iterate the list together. And amazingly, I thought I had a lot on the list, but Simon was able to add an awful lot additional work that was also ongoing. Eventually, when we were ready, we then shared that with the leadership team and really sold them the story around, you know, we've got a lot to do. Not only are we very, very busy now, but we also need to look at our future and prepare for our future and be clear about the things that we needed to deliver on top of just delivering the day business that we were really seeing very high levels at. So they bought into that concept. They bought into the idea of having a clear priority and communication to all partners. So this is the framework we came up with. For me, it's really important that the purpose and values which the team had worked on last year were well established, and we could use that as a grounding for where we wanted to be and what we wanted to do. So at the end of the day, you know, we are a we live in the Scottish Highlands. We're 100% employee owned, and it's all about creating a sustainable business in this geographic region. We're doing that through great tasting, health enhancing, nourishing seafoods. We're clear about our market, and we're also clear about not only our partners here in terms of the long-term growth and prosperity of our team, but our communities, because we do care about where we are. So, so the moment we're 100% supplied to Waitrose, which really helps us in that partnership. Their mindset of working with us is very positive and beneficial to us, and we learn an awful lot from them. But aspirationally, we need to find ways of looking at that, saying, what is it that we really need to be going forward? We haven't completed that work yet. It's an ongoing piece. I will get back to the continuously build our core competencies. It's something we're learning to do. It's something that I've done in the past, and I'll talk a little bit more to that later. So the key functional buckets that came out of this process were 3 externally focusing and 3 internally focusing. The externally one was meeting our commercial and our relationship needs as a service level. So one of the things I know and you will know is meeting your customers' needs and demands is crucial for, and how you manage that is crucial. The other piece that we're involved with is Scottish aquaculture. And it's very important that we maintain a leading voice in there, and we understand and drive forward with our relationship with Waitrose, the corporate social responsibility expectations that we have, not only as an Aquascot team, but also as a Waitrose team. So our voice there is really important. So we need to establish and keep that going as strong. And then the 3 core internal ones, improve our performance through reduced unit costs, continuous improvement, focused project delivery. Most importantly, doing the things we say we're going to do and doing the priorities that we say are priorities. It's really important to us as an employee-owned company that we improve as a business, as an employee-owned business, and that's in the eyes of our partners. So one of the things that was coming over clearly to me in those first couple of weeks was that partners don't understand the difference between being employee-owned and not being employee-owned. So finding ways of making sure they understand with tangible actions and policy and practice was really important to us. And the final thing was around sales and growth and those strategic plans in the marketplace to continue going. That's product development. It's about meeting the needs of not only a Waitrose, but our own needs around those performance of those products, but also other initiatives that we might want to take on to grow our sales. So they were the buckets. I'm not going to talk through the details of that, other than really to talk through what was the format that we used in those buckets. So we started to vocalize the critical issues within those buckets around what was really important to us. And then Simon and I wrote some strategies that we might use to overcome those critical issues and suggested some tactics or actual work and projects that might go towards overcoming those critical issues. So we wanted to clearly state the challenges, clearly state how we were going to face into those challenges, and then look at specific actions around what we were doing now in order to move that forward. As an employee-owned company in any sort of change management forum, it's really important to understand who your stakeholders are. So I wanted each page to really register that. So there's cross-functional understanding and appreciation, who's got an impact to the problem, who can help with it, but also who needs to be aware of it because it might impact them. So we came up with a format for these documents, and then we went into the next stage with the leadership team of saying, how do we resource this? So the first thing that came to mind was we needed champions for each page, and then it was about how do you create those champions or recruit those champions from the teams. I was very passionate about extending this accountability outside of just the direct leadership team, and we didn't default to title or position, that we provided opportunity for more partners to get involved and to take some real ownership of these things. So I did a one-to-one discussion with all of the leadership team, with other key partners. And in that process, it basically, the team self-selected as champions. People put themselves forward. We had discussions, and in some cases we've got dual champions. So as an example to that, being a great employee-owned business, the chair, Rachel, of our partnership council is jointly championing that with me as managing director. So those things sorted themselves out automatically once we started to talk about topics and those strategies and critical issues that we were facing. We then asked the champions to go away with their page. So at that point, I had authored it with Simon, and we basically then handed it off to them and said, it's yours now, do with it as you like. They recruited other broader team members and set about those pages. They worked on that section, they looked at the priorities, they discounted some, they altered some, they changed some of the strategies around to do that. And once that process was complete, we then gathered as a group with all of the team together and talked through the pages. And the idea of that was, do we as a broader group really buy into the priorities that each of these champions have for each of those sections? And using Poll Everywhere on the web, we actually went through a voting process so we could check the alignment, because we were working remotely. I mean, days before COVID-19, we would probably be in one meeting room with Post-it notes and having heated discussions. We couldn't do that. We were on Zoom calls and Teams meetings. So we used Poll Everywhere to do that voting, so you could see live on what the priorities were. And that proved a good level of alignment between what the champions had come up with and what we had come up with. The next stage of that, I needed to come up with an innovative way of finding how to take the top critical issues of all of the teams to see what were the top 5 or 6 for the company. And we used a different method for doing that, and I just used a PowerPoint screen. And as people voted, they had three votes against each. We could then see where that lie. So that process then came up with a list of 6 critical that were picked out of each of the pages as these are the 6 things that are most important that we need to get done this year into where we would like to aspire towards. The process was very open. I think there was a whole level of understanding and appreciation that we got from going through the process as a whole. And for my own selfish need, it provided an opportunity for me to get a much better awareness and understanding, not only of the partners, but also their mindsets and priorities, and also the business and what's really important to the business. The core capability is slightly different. So the intent here is that what we're striving to do is a longer term method for pulling together and documenting who we are as a company. So my experience in W.L. Gore, they had a cultural poster that grew through the history from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, as the company developed core competencies and capabilities that was really important for their business. So this is our attempt to start to do the same thing. Just that understanding around what's a core capability or competence is difficult for people to catch on to. I've had 22 years in Gore to understand that. So we are going through a journey here, and I'm definitely not going to be proposing them. It needs to come from the team that's been here longer than me. But we're aiming to start to build these, understand them, document them, add them for the values and the purpose that we've already got to become a total picture of who Aquascot is and what we strive to be. So where are we now? We're at the point now of building the teams, and the teams are out actioning against those priorities, building project plans and resources around those key tactics that we're going to deploy. We are using the monthly leadership team meetings to review these and to deliver partner communications around these objectives and outcomes. We are refreshing them, and as I say, this for me becomes our change management forum, where we throw in to that mix the key priorities and making sure that we're making the changes that we need to make right through the organization to be successful. So that's it for me. We'll move on to questions. I just wanted to reiterate that butterfly there. So just when you think, you know, the world is going to end, you can turn into something else. And I think with COVID-19, a lot of us will be challenged with how that moves us forward. So that's my final message, and I'll open it up now to questions. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, John. That was really fascinating, and I can see people who have now put. Oh, there's a few claps coming. I love the immersion use. So yeah, fascinating. And I guess we've got a couple of questions. I'll come to in a second. So you're getting lots of claps, John. Hope you've seen all those.
Okay.
The interesting question that straight away came to mind for me was: do you think this has happened because of COVID-19 or because you're a new MD?
Good question. I think it's both, actually. So I think we were challenged with, I was personally challenged with not being able to sit down and meet partners, because as soon as that happened, it became impossible to meet in that way. And time was precious to us because of the orders and the volume that we had. So partners were busy, really, really busy. So it wasn't like, oh, come and spend an hour with me. I'm the new guy. You can tell me all about it. Just wasn't an option. But also there's a recognition that as a team that Waitrose, retail, and the whole market has rapidly changed. So food service was 26% of where people bought food. Suddenly that went to our mainstream retailers in food marketing, and the way they were doing business needed to change considerably. And therefore, we've got to point into that differently. So it's both.
Yeah, I mean, and that leads us on to the next two questions, actually, which I'll come to in a second. But I think everything I'm reading at the moment and listening to and observing is that your butterfly analogy is true for almost every business. Every business is having to rethink how it does what it does, why it does what it does, and go back to some core thinking about purpose. So your presentation, I think, it will be highly relevant for everybody in the room. We've had a couple of specific questions. So can I start with the first one? This is from Andrew Evans. And I think he's picked up on the comment you made about the dedicated supplier to Waitrose and that sort of reliance. And I guess his observation there is, given that there's been this change, particularly a change from Ocado to M&S now, is there some risk there in being overly reliant on Waitrose?
Well, yes and no. So there's two ways of looking at an aligned partnership. One is it's really risky to the business because if they walk away, you don't have a business. On the other side of that, it's your joint business and you work together to make sure you meet the needs of the ultimate customer, and you can do that in a much more open and partnership way of doing that. In a less complex way because you're both trying to win-win in the process. The Ocado thing is a challenge to us because obviously everything's gone online, so they are a bigger portion than they were 5 months ago for our business. On the counter to that, Waitrose moved forward their online offering considerably, and they are now running at levels that they had planned to be running at the middle of next year. They pulled all of that investment forward because they needed to because of COVID-19, and they could. So we don't know what that circumstance will be completely for us. And I think if you ask retailers, they even don't know what the rest of the year is going to look like because of the change.
And I read this morning in the news that Amazon have then disrupted it even more this morning by announcing they're going to offer free delivery on everything. So,
and you know, if you listen to some of the other retail press, people like Asda are going to put kitchens into their stores and become takeouts. Instead of selling food, they're going to sell ready-made food. So there's lots of speculation about how the market will change. The key thing is we work with Waitrose to do that together.
We just had a question come in. I will come to there's a question from Alan Jenninson, which I'll come to in a second. We just had a question from Fred Bowden, who's asking about when you started looking at the strategy, did you consider the trend to online sales? Was that an integral part of that?
So within our partnership with Waitrose, you know, we talk through how can we manage that, and because we're one-to-one, and we manage other parts of their business too around sourcing fish. Online offering for us is not something we would do directly right now.
Okay. Last question there, because I know we need to move on, but Alan Dennison asked the question, and I noted this as well. You you made comment about there was a challenge of explaining to employees the difference between an employee-owned business and being an employee in that and a non-employee-owned business. And I guess, what did you mean by that, and how did you resolve that?
So one is we haven't resolved it. It's still an ongoing issue for us. You know, for me, it's an emotional connection to the company that they recognize and feel. And some of our partners are definitely not feeling that yet. And we need to make sure that they do feel it. So that's tangible things that they can see and feel that's different than they would expect. You know, those things are difficult, especially, you know, we are a fish processor. You know, it's a cold, wet environment that we operate in. It's fresh, it's fast moving. So those chances to really make a difference in the eyes of those guys is really hard. So we're working with other partners and other companies to see what you guys, so EOA is very important for us to understand some methodologies and other pieces we can pick up.
And that's very honest of you, John, to say that, because I think we know that, you know, it's very easy to paint this sector in a very idealistic way and say that everybody every day of their working life walks into their business and feels ownership and feels a sense of that, and we know that's not true for every organisation on every day. So it's very honest of you to say that, and I think, you know, keeping that ownership alive and reinventing it when you need to is a core part of why we do what we do in terms of connecting people. One last quick question, because I did say I would try and get everybody's questions out. So Paul Conway has asked, how helpful was your experience working at Gore? And we should say to everybody that Gore is an employer business. You didn't say that. I think you assumed everyone knew. So how helpful was your experience working at Gore as an associate in creating the strategy at Aquascot?
Really important. It was something that we did routinely, not only as a plant level, but, you know, region and enterprise level, because of that communication and ownership of task. So it's really important in Gore that each and every, they call them associates, understood what piece they played in the whole picture. And then they took total ownership. So Gore, one of Gore's commitments is commitment. So throughout the whole nearly $4 billion of sales and 10,000 associates, no one can tell anybody what to do. They take their own commitments. Well, if you're taking your own commitment, you need to understand what's valuable to the business. So that was key. So the handicap I've got is 22 years living in that environment and coming to a new environment and thinking everybody knows what I know or feels what I felt. So my challenge is to turn that around and go, right, we can't jump there because that was 50 years and 60 years in the making. What's the next step that we need to take that moves us towards that? And that's my biggest challenge here, but it's very helpful.
Brilliant. Well, John, thank you so much for sharing so honestly what you've been through. I'm sure there'll be a number of people who would like to revisit the slides, and I know we're going to share this presentation after the event. So thank you to John. At this moment in time, you would normally get a round of applause.